All right, we're going to take a few questions, and I'm going to start with Jim Coonan, who I understand announced his retirement today. Jim, you're kind of young to retire, man. While you're ahead? Well, we're going to miss you, but you're going to be here for a couple weeks, right? All right. Congratulations. Appreciate it.
Sir, you're on the cusp of entering into a nuclear agreement with Iran, but there's still a number of unresolved issues with Iran. In particular, the fates of Americans like Jason Rezan, Amir Hekmati, Saeed Abedini, Robert Levinson. You and your administration say you're continue to raise the imprisonment and disappearance of these individuals, these Americans, but still you will sign, likely, an agreement with Tehran, and those issues will remain unresolved. What do you say to the families about how you will deal with their loved ones? And I guess the bottom line is, do you find the Iranian leadership trustworthy? And Madam President, welcome to the U.S. You canceled a previous trip to the United States following the Snowden revelations of, do you need a translation? Of NSA spying.
Can you talk?
A little louder.
A little louder, certainly. You canceled a previous trip to the United States following the revelations by Edward Snowden of NSA spying on you. Are you still troubled by those revelations, and have you received assurances, and are you satisfied with the answers you have received from the administration? Thank you.
Well, first of all, Jim, with respect to U.S. citizens, U.S. persons who were held in Iran, this is something that we continue to push hard on, irrespective of the nuclear deal. It's a top priority for us to make sure that our people are treated fairly. And on the face of it, in the case of these individuals who've been held, they have not been. And they are not being afforded the basic due process and legal rights that we afford visitors to our country. So we're deeply concerned about it. We spend a lot of time pushing on it, and we will continue to do so. And there's no lessening of the sense of urgency. So when I talk to the families, we remind them of the fact that that is a mission that will continue and has been worked on consistently throughout their captivity. With respect to the larger issue of whether I trust the Iranian regime, as I've said before, there are deep-seated disagreements and divisions between the United States and Iran, and those aren't going to go away overnight. The goal of the nuclear negotiations is not to rely on trust, but to set up a verifiable mechanism where we are cutting off the pathways for Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon. And John Kerry right now is there, along with Secretary of Energy Moniz, who's one of the top nuclear physicists in the world. They are deeply engaged in negotiations. My hope is that they can achieve an agreement, but my instructions to them have been extremely clear. The framework agreement that was established at Lausanne is one that, if implemented effectively and codified properly, would in fact achieve my goal, which is Iran not obtaining a nuclear weapon. There has been a lot of talk on the other side from the Iranian negotiators about whether in fact they can abide by some of the terms that came up in Lausanne. If they cannot, that's going to be a problem. Because I've said from the start, I will walk away from the negotiations if, in fact, it's a bad deal. If we can't provide assurances that the pathways for Iran obtaining a nuclear weapon are closed, And if we can't verify that, if the inspections regime, the verification regime is inadequate, then we're not going to get a deal. And we've been very clear to the Iranian government about that. And the good news is that our P5+1 partners in these negotiations feel exactly the same way. So, there's still some hard negotiations to take place, but ultimately this is going to be up to the Iranians to determine whether or not they meet the requirements that the international community has set forth to be able to fairly and accurately and consistently assess whether or not they have foreclosed the possibility of obtaining a nuclear weapon. And given past behavior on the part of Iran, that can't simply be a declaration by Iran and a few inspectors wandering around every once in a while. That's going to have to be a serious, rigorous verification mechanism. And that, I think, is going to be the test as to whether we get a deal or not.
Bom, é verdade, eu cancelei a minha visita aos Estados Unidos naquele momento. De lá para cá, algumas coisas mudaram. E a mudança se deve ao fato do presidente Obama e o governo dos Estados Unidos terem declarado em várias oportunidades que não teriam mais atos que seriam de intrusão em países amigos. Eu acredito no presidente Obama e mais, ele também me disse que quando quiser, se fosse o caso dele precisar de alguma informação não pública sobre o Brasil, ele me telefonaria. Então, eu tenho certeza que as condições passaram a ser bastante diferentes agora. Eu agora queria chamar a jornalista Sandra Coutinho, da Globo News. Sandra.
I suggest that you use this sweatshirt in a soccer game, please. We need all the help we can get.
Well, if Brazil's playing somebody else, then maybe I'll.
Yeah, sure.
If they're playing the United States, I'm sorry.
No, not against the United States. Okay, Mr. President, you were talking about a new relationship based on trust. And President Dilma just mentioned when Brazil canceled this trip because a matter of trust. And Brazil is also in the middle of a very deep political and economical crisis. Can you trust one another in this moment to build this new chapter?
Well, my
President,
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. E, presidente, o Brasil se vê como um líder global no cenário mundial. E os Estados Unidos veem o Brasil como um cenário regional. Como conciliar essas duas visões?
Well, I'm actually going to answer, in part, the question you just asked the President. We view Brazil not as a regional power, but as a global power. If you think about the preeminent economic forum for coordinating between major economies, the G20, Brazil is a major voice in that. The negotiations that are going to be taking place in Paris around climate change can only succeed with Brazil as a key leader. And the announcements that have been made today about their goals on renewable energy is indicative of Brazil's leadership. Brazil is a major global player. And I told President Dilma last night that the United States, as powerful as we are and as interested in as we are in solving a whole range of international issues, recognizes we can't do it alone. On issues like global health, we're not going to succeed unless we're working with Brazil and other major countries so that we can identify where there might be the outbreak of a disease, how we prevent it from turning into a pandemic. If we want to be successful on climate change, on countering terrorism, on making sure that we are reducing extreme poverty around the world. All the major countries have to be involved in that process. And Brazil, we consider to be an absolutely indispensable partner in these efforts. With respect to trust, I will say that President Rousseff and I have had an excellent relationship since she took office. I trust her completely. She's always been very candid and frank with me about the interests of the Brazilian people and how we can work together. She's delivered on what she's promised. When we met in Panama, we discussed, for example, the defense cooperation agreements that were just mentioned. She got those through Congress. As somebody who knows something about Congresses, I know that's never easy. So for her to use political capital in order to get that done, I think is indicative of the kind of reliable partner that she is. And so we believe that this meeting that we've had this week builds on a series of steps that have continued to deepen cooperation between our two countries. There's still going to be differences occasionally, but that's true with every one of our close friends and allies. No country is going to have identical interests. There will always be some frictions, but our common values, the strong people-to-people relations that we have, the fact that we are the largest countries in the hemisphere with similar histories, I think all that means that we should be very strong partners for years to come.
Bom, eu acredito que uma parte da minha resposta o presidente Obama deu e eu agradeço a ele por isso. Mas eu queria fazer uma consideração. Os países, eles passam por crises e dificuldades. O fato de passarem por crises e dificuldades não pode implicar em que haja qualquer diminuição do papel de um país. Até porque um país só é, de fato, um grande país se ele é capaz de superar as dificuldades. Isso vale para países, para pessoas, vale para tudo. A coragem de superar dificuldades, enfrentá-las e ter, de fato, o compromisso com o seu povo e o seu país, mas também com o relacionamento com países como os Estados Unidos e com o resto do mundo é algo fundamental. Então, eu acredito que o Brasil e os Estados Unidos têm muito em comum. Nós somos países que tiveram uma marca que nós lutamos para superar, que é a marca da escravidão. Nós somos países com grandes populações negras. Nós somos países com multidiversidade étnica, cultural, e esse é, talvez, dos nossos grandes patrimônios, e acho que os Estados Unidos também. E somos democracias muito fortes. O Brasil, eu tenho certeza, assim como os Estados Unidos, eu saudei hoje o presidente Obama por ter superado a crise que atingiu o país em 2008, 2009, o Brasil também vai superar os efeitos dessa crise que recai agora sobre ele. E vai fazer isso com muita decisão, muito empenho e, mais do que isso, nós vamos não só voltar a crescer, mas assegurar todas as conquistas que tivemos nos últimos 12 anos. E, além disso, fazer com que essas conquistas se multipliquem. Nós queremos, de fato, construir um grande país de classe média. Acho que a redução da desigualdade foi uma conquista e nós temos de lutar para preservá-la.
Jim Acosta. Where's Jim?
Thank you, Mr. President. I hope you don't mind if I ask a multi-part question. The first one being on Greece, I would be remiss if I didn't ask about the prospect of a financial crisis in Europe. And just in layman's terms, in language that Americans can understand, I just want to ask simply, is a financial crisis in Greece capable of bringing down the global economy? And separately, sir, I wanted to ask you about what some people are calling your best week ever. Last week, you had 2 Supreme Court decisions supportive of the Affordable Care Act and of gay rights. You also delivered a speech down in Charleston that was pretty warmly received. It seems that you've built up some political capital for the remaining months of your presidency. I'm curious how you want to use it. What hard things do you want to tackle at this point? And President Rousseff, if I may ask you, you extended an invitation to the President to join you at the Olympics in Rio next year. The terrorist group ISIS has shown a willingness and capacity to carry out terrorist attacks around the world. What preparations are you making to make sure that the Olympic Games are safe, and are you concerned about that happening in Rio? Thank you very much, Madam President.
Good. On Greece, this is a situation that we've been monitoring throughout the year. As I think most people are aware, there has been an ongoing crisis in Greece dating back to 2009, 2010. And it's something that I've been deeply involved with periodically, working with our European partners. It is an issue of substantial concern. It is an issue primarily of concern to Europe. Essentially, what you have here is a country that has gone through some very difficult economic times, needs to find a path towards growth and a path to stay in the Eurozone. And what we've been encouraging both the Greek government and our European partners to do is to continue to negotiate and find a pathway towards a resolution. It is also important for us to make sure that we plan for any contingency and that we work with the European Central Bank and other international and institutions to make sure that some of the bumps that may occur in the financial markets that have already occurred are smoothed out. In layman's terms, for the American people, this is not something that we believe will have a major shock to the system, but obviously it's very painful for the Greek people, and it can have a significant effect on growth rates in Europe. And if Europe's not growing the way it needs to grow, that has an impact on us. It has an impact on Brazil. Those are major export markets, and that can have a dampening effect on the entire world economy. So it's something that we are monitoring. It's something that we spend a lot of time on. Jack Lew's been on the phone fairly consistently over the last several months. I've spoken to my European counterparts, encouraging them to find a path towards resolution. So it's something that we take seriously, but it's not something that I think should prompt overreactions. And so far, I think the markets have properly factored in the risks involved. In terms of my best week, now my best week, I will tell you, was marrying Michelle. That was a really good week. Malia and Sasha being born, excellent weeks.
Good that you remember those.
Yeah. There was a game where I scored 27 points. That was a pretty good week. I've had some good weeks in my life, I will tell you, and I'm blessed to have had those. I think last week was gratifying because, number one, we were able to get a package of trade legislation that I believe will serve the American people, American workers and American businesses as well going into the future. It gives us the opportunity to negotiate high standards agreements that have enforceable labor and environmental provisions. It was a tough fight because, you know, there were a lot of folks in my own party who viewed this as accelerating some of the damaging or frightening trends around globalization that have taken place over the last several decades. My argument to them has consistently been that we're not going to stop globalization. We have to shape it in a way that helps people, and that these are tools that are going to help us do that. But being able to get that done was very important. The Affordable Care Act, as I said before, the results, I think, speak for themselves. We have the lowest uninsured rate that we have since we started keeping records. It's worked better, cost less than even supporters anticipated. And if we can get some governors that have been holding out and resisting expanding Medicaid, primarily for political reasons, to think about what they can do for their citizens who don't have health insurance, but could get it very easily if state governments acted, then we could see even more improvement over time. You know, my remarks at Charleston were heartfelt. It wasn't a celebration. It was, I think, a reflection on the consistent challenge of race in this country and how we can find a path towards a better way. And I was gratified to see not only the incredible response of the families who have been affected by this tragedy, but by the response of people like Governor Haley in how they viewed the issue of the Confederate flag. As I said on Friday, I think it doesn't solve all our problems, but what it does is signify a sense of empathy and recognition that I think is always the start of progress. So in many ways, last week was simply a culmination of a lot of work that we've been doing since I came into office. How am I going to spend whatever political capital that I've built up? You know, the list is long, and my instructions to my team and my instructions to myself have always been that we are going to squeeze every last ounce of progress that we can make when I have the privilege of, as long as I have the privilege of holding this office. We announced overtime rules that I'm going to be talking about more this week. That's going to give a raise to 5 million people, potentially, in this country who really deserve it. I want to see if we can get bipartisan work done with Congress around rebuilding our infrastructure. Brazil just talked about their rebuilding of highways and roads and ports and bridges. You know what? We got the same work to do, and we need to put people back to work there. I am really interested in the possibilities, the prospect of bipartisan legislation around the criminal justice system, something that I think directly speaks to some of the themes I mentioned on Friday. And we've seen some really interesting leadership from some unlikely Republican legislators, very sincerely concerned about making progress there. I want to keep on making progress on job training and making sure that the idea of 2 years of free community college starts taking root. Man, the list is long. And what we're going to do is just keep on hammering our way at all the issues that I think are going to have an impact on the American people. Some of them will be left undone, but we're going to try to make progress on every single one of them. And I've always said, one of the things I've learned in this presidency is that There are going to be ups and there are going to be downs. But as long as my focus and my team's focus is on what is going to make a difference in the lives of ordinary Americans, are we going to give them more opportunity so that if they work hard, they can get ahead? Are we going to make this a more inclusive economy, a more inclusive society, a more fair, just society? If that's our North Star, and we keep on tacking in that direction, we're going to make progress. And yeah, I feel pretty excited about it. So I might see if we can make next week even better.
Another press conference.
I love press conferences. It's my press team that's always holding me back. I want to talk to you guys every day. Sorry, Josh.
Bom, nós levamos muito a sério a questão da segurança nos grandes eventos. Levamos muito a sério a questão da segurança nos grandes eventos. E isso significa que nós envolvemos todos os órgãos que podem garantir e vão garantir a segurança nas Olimpíadas, a saber, as Forças Armadas, a Polícia Federal e todos os órgãos de polícia do Estado do Rio de Janeiro. Nós temos uma experiência nessa área, porque o ano passado nós organizamos a Copa do Mundo e não tivemos de dar segurança apenas para uma cidade. Nós asseguramos a segurança, não houve nenhuma ação que não fosse controlada em 12 cidades brasileiras, criando, inclusive, um sistema bastante efetivo de controle através de centros de operação de monitoramento e controle de todas as atividades, o deslocamento tanto o deslocamento de esportistas quanto de autoridades. Nós acompanhamos todos e asseguramos toda a segurança. Por isso, eu tenho certeza, e não é bom ficar a gente dando ideias pela imprensa, eu tenho certeza que nós teremos todas as condições de garantir a segurança das Olimpíadas, assim como garantimos a segurança da Copa do Mundo. Aliás, eu acredito que as Olimpíadas, agora, de 2016, o ano que vem, em julho, nós teremos uma Olimpíada especial, porque vai combinar a alegria do Brasil e a beleza. Cada país acha que a sua cidade é a mais bonita. Eu acho que a cidade mais bonita do mundo é o Rio de Janeiro. Então, vai combinar toda uma excelente organização com a capacidade fantástica do povo brasileiro de receber os visitantes, receber os esportistas. Nós convidamos a todos aqueles que queiram ir ao Brasil, que vão, porque nós vamos garantir não só a segurança, mas também uma grande festa nas Olimpíadas de 2016. Eu agora tenho de chamar aqui o nosso repórter da Folha de São Paulo, Raul Justilori, para a segunda pergunta.
Mr. President, Petrobras, our state-owned oil giant, is being sued by many American investors who lost millions of dollars and is being investigated by the Department of Justice because of allegations of corruption. Is it an issue of concern? E para a presidenta Dilma, presidenta, a senhora vai manter os ministros Aloysio Mercadante e Edinho Silva no governo? Obrigado.
I make it a policy not to comment on active cases that are working their way through the justice system, partly because the people here in the United States know that the lawyers work for me, and I want to make sure that we appear impartial. I'm not familiar with all the details of the case, so I'll decline to comment on the specifics. I will make a general statement that I have had the opportunity to work with President Rousseff on the Open Government Initiative that we've been trying to mobilize internationally. And Brazil's been a great partner in that process, that the more we can create accountability and transparency in our government systems, the better off we're going to be. And that takes work, it takes time, but Brazil's been a strong partner with us in that process, and I hope that both countries can continue to make progress on that front.
Eu gostaria de destacar que a Petrobras é, de fato, uma das grandes empresas produtoras e exploradoras de petróleo e gás. A Petrobras tem mais de 90 mil funcionários. Alguns funcionários da Petrobras cometeram delitos de corrupção, assim é a investigação do Ministério Público da Polícia Federal, que os investiga e atualmente já os processa. Eles vão ter de ser primeiro considerados culpados, mas os indícios que os procuradores levantam são grandes. Com isso eu quero dizer o quê? Eu quero dizer que todas as medidas legais que se tomarem em relação à Petrobras vão ter de considerar que dentro da Petrobras foi cometido atos de corrupção. Porém, não são de todos os funcionários, não é do conjunto da empresa e, portanto, tem de haver a responsabilização de quem é aquele que cometeu. Se houver claramente isso, os autores vão ser punidos, para depois se saber o que vai acontecer nos processos em relação à empresa. Agora, a boa notícia em relação à Petrobras é que ela é uma empresa forte, hoje muito bem gerida, com processos de governança e de compliance bastante ajustados. Se não fosse assim, como a gente poderia considerar que ela tenha chegado a produzir 800 mil barris dia e tenha ganho, este ano, o chamado Oscar do petróleo, por inovação, que é o prêmio da OTC. Então, eu quero dizer o seguinte, a Petrobras não é uma empresa sobre júdice. A Petrobras é uma empresa em pleno uso da sua atividade. Da minha parte, eu quero te dizer o seguinte, eu nunca demiti ministro ou aceitei ministro nomeados pela imprensa ou demitidos pela imprensa. E, assim sendo, eu vou aguardar toda a divulgação dos fatos, né? Toda a divulgação dos fatos para avaliar a situação. Agora, em princípio, acredito que seja necessário, pelo menos, que todos nós tenhamos acesso às mesmas coisas. O governo brasileiro não tem acesso aos autos. Estranhamente, há um vazamento seletivo e alguns têm. E aí, durante um tempo, podem falar o que quiser, que aqueles que são mencionados não têm como se defender, porque não sabem do que são acusados. Nós, que viemos de um processo de democratização, que somos um país que conseguiu romper com tudo o que havia de mais discricionário, arbitrário e sem direitos, que foram as ditaduras, e no caso do Brasil, uma forte ditadura, nós temos de ter o maior respeito pelo direito de defesa e por uma coisa que se chama, se condena quando se prova. Não tem o inverso, a pessoa tem de se provar inocente. Quem prova que a pessoa é culpada é quem acusa. Esse é o princípio básico da civilização ocidental que nós compartilhamos. Quando a gente fala em democracia, nós falamos disso, o direito de defesa das pessoas e a obrigação da prova ser formada com fundamentos e não simplesmente com ilações ou sem acesso às peças acusatórias. Isso é um tanto quanto Idade Média, então não é isso que se pratica hoje no Brasil.
One thing I did want to mention, Jim, about last week, I had a chance to do the Rose Garden celebration of the court decision around same-sex marriage. I did not have a chance to comment on how good the White House looked in rainbow colors. That made it a really good week. To see people gathered in an evening outside on a beautiful summer night, and to feel whole, and to feel accepted, and to feel that they had a right to love, that was pretty cool. That was a good thing.
No regrets on involving.
That was a good thing. And the only bad part about it was I couldn't go out and peek at it myself, because then I would have had to clear out all the people, or Secret Service would have. So I could only reflect on it from a television screen. That's a moment worth savoring. Thank you very much, everybody. We did.